a show that has had great relationships with all kinds of leaders of different religions. We sit with each other. We don't always agree, and no, we listen. We do make jokes. It is what happens on this show. You don't have to agree with what we're doing. You don't even have to like it, but you have to understand that it does happen. Yeah. Now, to call us intolerant or to call out ABC, let's get rid of that, because ABC we know is tolerant of everyone. They have Sunday nights with Joel Osteen. Joel Osteen. Yeah. You know, so we know that they're fine with that. But the idea that this show is not tolerant of other people's religious beliefs, I find a little hard.
Also, to imply that I'm a Christian, I give money to the church. Yeah. You know, I mean, I actually help Christians with my pocketbook. So I'm not insulting Christians.
Okay. So if I give money to a fundraiser that's held by a car dealership, am I a car dealer? I mean, she can give money to what she calls the church. What do we even know about that? So that's what we're going to discuss right now. I'm finding it a little. I'm in between while I'm sitting here, like totally. I'm flabbergasted. I'm in between because I feel like there's two obvious things that have to be discussed here. First of all, we have to have a baseline for what we believe to be someone who's a Christian, and in having that and saying that, we have to go to the word. And so we'll do that. And so there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem with that. But I do want to make clear that, you know, no one can know for certain. Only God knows for certain whether or not a person is truly a Christian, meaning they've accepted Christ. But what I want to do is lay out some ways that we can tell if a person is a Christian or not. And my natural inclination, my human, you know, my mind and everything within me wants to just scream from the rooftops, Joy Behar is no Christian. And I could be right or I could be wrong. But the purpose of this discussion is not to pass condemnation on Joy Behar for her Christianity or lack thereof, but to arm us with some tools on how we can tell. And also just to cover this story, it's wrong. It is wrong for her to mock Christianity and then later when she gets in trouble for it, call it a joke. And then say, and I'm a Christian, so, you know, I'm allowed. I'm a Christian, and I don't mock Christianity. Now, there's a difference against, let's get this out there, too, because I know I'm going to have some detractor emailing tonight and say, well, mockery is a form of laughter, and anyone can, you know, anything, there's nothing off limits. Okay, sure, maybe for you, but when I use my dictionary, and I prefer to use the dictionary meanings for words, mockery is derision and contempt. A key tenet of someone mocking something is that they are inherently putting it down. You're inherently saying, look at this, let's laugh at it. Let's not laugh about it and its irony or its hilarity. Let's laugh at this because it is worthy of our derision and mockery. Let's hold this thing up as something that should be vilified. There's an element of vilification to mockery. Comedy can poke fun at certain aspects of something without demeaning it. So you might hear Christian comedians and they make fun of, you know, the way people raise their hands in church. They're not mocking people. They're calling attention to the many different ways that people might raise their hands in worship to Jesus Christ when you're in the church service. And they're doing it because it's something that we all experience. If you're a Christian and you attend church, you see different forms of worship in the sanctuary as you're going through the service. And so that's brought up as you know, it's something that's funny. No one's being mocked. So that's not what happened here. If you were listening to the show yesterday, you heard we played the audio of the women on The View, and Sunny Hostin, who is the attorney, she used to be an attorney, or she still is an attorney. She used to be a prosecutor. And she's one of the regular guests on the show. And she, you know, claims Catholicism today. But on the day of the actual event, the mocking of Christianity and comparing Christianity to mental illness, Sunny Hostin just sat there and she, you know, she kind of laughed. And Meghan McCain went on camera, because they didn't keep her on camera a ton, looked extremely uncomfortable. Now, we all know I have differences with Meghan McCain on a ton of issues because socially she's pretty moderate. But she claims to be a Republican. And, you know, I don't really care. I think it's good that they still have someone who claims to be a Republican on that show. But there's just a lot going on here And then after the actual event on television where they compared Christianity to mental illness and said, if you think you hear from Jesus Christ or from God, that's it for you. You're mentally ill. Now they've walked it back. And so later, and I didn't have time to do this audio for you today, but you'll have to watch the entire segment. I encourage you to do so because I think it's a real clear example of what happens when money comes roaring in. So your ideology has to take a back seat to your paycheck, right? These are not people who are going to denounce their jobs at ABC to hold to the point that Christianity is worthy of derision and mockery. Understand that. They still believe it, but they're going to make their mouths, they're going to fix their mouths to say something different. And the reason that they're going to do that is because doing that makes it possible for them to keep their jobs. And they'll mock Christianity again later. But for right now, they're going to leave it where it is because they need to walk it back because they've been told to do so by their bosses. And Whoopi admitted that. You got Meghan McCain coming in and really making a true statement about how they regularly shut down voices that are not on the left. Anyone who's pro-life, anyone who's a Trump supporter, anyone who's from the red part of the country, they mock, they make fun of them, they smash them down, they don't listen to their opinions. And Whoopi cuts her off real quick and says, look, I'm being told to do this. We need to shut this down. So there is your admission that that's what this is about. As usual, time is my enemy. I have so much more and I want to share with you these parameters for Christianity, and we have a caller. So here's what I'm going to do. We'll go quickly to the phones, and we'll have to keep it quick. David from California, thank you so much for calling in. You're going to have to keep it pithy because I have some more stuff to get to.
Well, I'll keep it quick. Thank you for your courage for the gospel, for patriotism, and for being just a great person. And your honesty and courageous attitude is fantastic. Never, ever underestimate the destructive nature of the left. Never be surprised at what they do. And their role is to hurt and destroy what we stand for.
I'm unfortunately, I have to agree with you. I wish I did. I wish I couldn't, but you're right, David. Thank you so much for calling in. So this is what I want to go over today really quickly, and we'll delve back into it after our guest. We have a really fantastic guest today, by the way. One guest, it's Friday, so you're basically my second guest. You callers can feel free to chime in during the entirety of the show. The call lines are on the screen, and we also have our call lines open, 866-963-2037. We have Julio Rivera. He's the editorial director for Reactionary Times and a featured columnist at Newsmax.com, LifeZet.com, ClashDaily.com. He's going to come on and talk to us about immigration and the Dreamers. And I actually don't know what his position is, if he's for the Dreamers or against them or what. So we're going to explore that in the next segment. But here's what we need to know about what she said, because you might have someone in your life that's like this. They constantly mock Christianity. They make fun of you. They think you should be doing things that you find morally reprehensible. And when you won't do them, they rip into you. They mock you. They lift you up in front of other groups of people and say, oh, they're boring. She's boring. He's a stick in the mud. He won't go drinking with us. He won't get drunk. He won't do a little cocaine after work. He doesn't like marijuana. They might be mocking you for that. How do we know if a person is a Christian? Because you can pray and not be a Christian. Well, first, that person has to be able to admit that they're a sinner, because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. They have to have repented of their sins and believe in and receive Jesus Christ, not some nebulous universe, but Jesus Christ into their life. So the fact is, everyone that claims Christ isn't a believer, but you can look at their fruit. If they're mocking Christianity, it's probably a pretty good chance they're not a Christian. Just saying. All right. That's the first segment. We'll be back with our guest and so much more. Stacy on the right after this. Stay there.
Nearly 1 in 4 pregnancies in America will end in abortion. The Ministry of Preborn provides free ultrasounds for abortion-minded women throughout America. When a mother sees her baby on an ultrasound and hears the baby's heartbeat, she's 80% more likely to keep her baby.
They introduced me to my child for the first time through an ultrasound. I was able to see this life growing inside of me, hear the heartbeat, and nothing else mattered at that point. I wasn't afraid anymore. I got to meet my child for the first time, and it changed everything. I was a mother to be.
Your gift of $140 will cover the cost of 5 ultrasounds. All donations are tax deductible, and 100% of your gift goes to saving babies. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or donate securely at preborn.com. Your love can save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. Perhaps you remember some years ago, General Motors got into some hot water when it was discovered that its most prestigious model, the Cadillac, had the same engine as the Buick and the Oldsmobile. Well, a lot of Cadillac owners got upset because they found out that they could have saved a lot of money if they had bought a Buick or Oldsmobile. They had the same horsepower as the more expensive Cadillac. It's true, isn't it? What we're called doesn't really matter. It is really who we are. It is what is on the inside. If we say we belong to Christ, then our outward behavior needs to correspond to that inward reality. In Ephesians chapter 4, verses 17 and 20, we're reminded how a Christian ought to behave. Verse 17 says, "This I say therefore and affirm together with the Lord, that you walk no longer as the Gentiles also walked in the futility of their mind." Then down in verse 20, "But you did not learn Christ in this way." It's as if Paul says, hey, come on, don't act like that. Isn't there a difference in your life? Didn't you trust Christ as your Savior and Lord? The reality of Christ ought to be demonstrated in how we conduct ourselves on a daily basis. We need to walk away from the pull of the flesh and the power of the past. If our salvation, our transformation is genuine, that same Christ who saved us is the one who will help us to overcome the pull of going back to our past. Here's what I want you to remember today. Jesus Christ has changed your life. You don't have to go back to sinful bondage. That's futility. You don't have to live there anymore. Let's walk toward Jesus and away from our sinful past.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. It is my pleasure to be with you. And you can always check out the things that I say. For anyone who's listening and thinking, yeah, she don't know what she's talking about. Joy Behar's definitely a Christian. Okay, believe what you want. This isn't an indoctrination camp. It's a conversation. And as the host, I get to share with you what I feel is the truth, what I've looked up, what I've researched, what I believe is the truth. And then you can check it. I'm always open to your comments. If you go into personal attacks, I'm going to have fun sharing your silliness on the air. Or I might ignore you. Either way. So my choice, just like it's your choice to engage. Right now, welcome back to the show. AFR.net, urbanfamilytalk.com, and stacyontheright.com. Those are the websites where you can check stuff out. And we're going to go to our guests now. Such a pleasure to have Julio Rivera, editorial director for Reactionary Times. He writes for a number of different organizations, and he's a featured columnist for Newsmax.com. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you, Stacy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you because this is the other hot button issue that's roiling the country right now, and that is the failure of the majority of the kind of more liberal immigration bills that have been put forward. And now we're left with the Grassley product, which is the one that most closely mirrors the president's 4 pillars of immigration reform, or, you know, what we're trying to do here with the DACA recipients. Tell us a little bit more about the Senate beginning the debate on immigration and the fate of dreamers.
Well, I mean, they definitely went ahead and voted to go ahead and have these discussions. So it's time to move forward and actually figure out what's going to be put together and what's going to be something that can actually pass. Now, the Republicans, to me, have not used this strategically in the correct manner. I think that they were in a position where they could have gotten a lot more in concessions from Democrats across the board had they went ahead and packaged, you know, and Trump has thrown around a huge number. He's thrown around 1.8 million, which is a lot larger than the actual DACA recipients number, which is about 1 million less than that. I mean, I think that we're in a bad position. Myself as a conservative, I would prefer, maybe legalization only for the DACA recipients and not for anything above and beyond that. I mean, I think we've already made an investment into these people more or less, we've educated them. They have been in the country for a long time, and most of them are paying into our system. They're paying taxes. Some are in the military. You look at them a little bit different than the average person that just may cross the border and take a job away from an American, a low-wage job, let's say. Those ones that a lot of the people, the progressives in either party, like to keep those people in this country because they're getting a lot of money from businessmen who love that cheap labor. So, I mean, it is an interesting situation, but I think as a country we have to ask ourselves, are we going to show respect for our borders here? Are we going to maybe legalize some people but be allowed to have the teeth to go ahead and then deport millions more above and beyond, by far, the amount of people that are actually in this country currently under DACA?
So I went over a bunch of the provisions of the three most prominent proposals that were kind of up, and so only the Grassley proposal remains. And I understand the idea of negotiating and all of that, but what do you say to, because as a conservative, you understand there's the DACA issue, but there's the larger issue of the midterm election 2018. And the Democrats are motivated, they're energized, they're going to turn out in the midterms. They have to. It's the nature of the midterms that the party that loses power, they're energized, they want to prove something because they just lost an election, so they show up. So we know voter turnout will be high for Democrats. How do we keep a deal like the one that the president has given his approval to, which legalizes, it doesn't just give them work permits, but legalizes them as citizens, 1.8 million DACA recipients who are, after all, illegal aliens. With the law is the law is the law. How do we then keep Republicans energized enough to win the midterms?
Well, there's no way to really do it at this point. I mean, unfortunately, any proposal that grants some semblance of legalization that doesn't have, let's say, a lot of give-me's where the Democrats are going to kind of concede on a lot of issues isn't going to be palatable to Republicans. It's certainly not going to be palatable to conservatives. So the Republicans are in a tough situation here. I think that they gave away a lot already. I mean, I think that what Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago talked about a work requirement for Medicaid. If we expanded that larger into a spending reform bill, an entitlement reform bill, and then maybe put in that legalization, I could understand that. But I don't see, with the way the budgets have been laid out, the Republicans have any desire, more or less, to change the status quo. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think the Republicans are in danger here. I think that but the one thing they could do is go ahead, the prevailing thought is if they go ahead and grant some semblance of legalization to these people, that maybe people will look at Republicans differently. But that is a false premise, because no matter what happens, even if Donald Trump went ahead and legalized 3 to 5 million illegal aliens, the Republicans are still going to be demonized. They're still going to be portrayed as the party of xenophobia, the party of racism, and all these false narratives, and it's not going to help us at all in the midterm. So it's almost better to stick to your guns at this point and maybe not grant any kind of legalization. But the larger problem is ending the chain migration. I think that giving a lot more funding to the border enforcement, right, and potentially funding for the wall. I've always thought that you don't necessarily need a massive, expensive wall. You more or less just need to enforce immigration law. That's something that Pat Buchanan said years ago. If we went ahead and sanctioned the people giving these people jobs, if we took away that sort of environment, that sanctuary environment that they're trying to create in California, here in New Jersey, where I live, Phil Murphy just came in as governor. He wants to make it a sanctuary state. It's about changing the environment for these people and hopefully, them self-supporting.
So, okay, you just said a lot there, and I agree with you. What about, so there's also been some discussion on national media on the conservative side where there's kind of a consensus. I believe Newt Gingrich was the first to kind of open the door with it, and Monica Crowley came on our show and talked a little bit about it. I kind of feel like they're right in their assertion that the Democrats aren't going to have a bill or a proposal that comes from a Republican president, especially not Donald Trump, that they're going to be willing to sign on to, simply because any proposal coming from a Republican president has to address chain migration and border enforcement. And those are two things that they are rapidly opposed to. Recent position flip-flops, obviously, they used to be for border enforcement as well. But so he could say he would legalize all 11 million illegal aliens, or how he could say 20 million illegal aliens, wherever they may be found, whether they're here or not already, we'll legalize them. And the Democrats would still say no, because ending chain migration reduces immigration into this country by 1 million a year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's an issue that they're just going to continue to pounce on, and they're never really going to want to completely fix it anyway. They may come up with a proposal that they're amenable to, but like you said, it's not going to be something that the Republicans can go out there and trot out as a victory going into this midterm election. This is unfortunately the politics when it comes to, something that's such a human issue, because they'll be able to, the Democrats will be able to tug on the heartstrings this entire process and make the Republicans out to be something that they're not. Now, conversely, if the economic results are strong, people have to ask themselves, if you're an American, if you're a legal citizen here, if you're a Democrat voter, and if you're a minority who's hurt the most by this scourge of illegal immigration, do you still want to tote that party line? It's going to be hard to break those types of voters into thinking, because think about it. If you look at the electoral map, the Republicans win just about anywhere that isn't a large urban metropolis with a lot of low-income people that are on dependency programs. That's just the way the map is laid out. So until people start thinking differently about it and understand that, all this illegal immigration and all this legalization and allowing all these people to come in and take their jobs is actually hurting them more than anyone else, you're going to get the same results.
Okay, so how about this, Julio? Because this is one of the things that I'm really... I'm fascinated by the phenomenon, but it's depressing, but it's also oddly fascinating as well, like a train wreck or something. And that is, you mentioned, and aptly so, that there's this big, the Democrats use the fact that Dreamers and DACA recipients and all those people, that they're here through no fault of their own, and they pull on the heartstrings of Americans. And I don't believe the polling. In fact, it's becoming kind of a game for the Daily Wire and Fox News to debunk the polling that says that 88% of Americans want legalization. That's actually not true. But Julio, What about our side? So they get to pull on the heartstrings on the kind of false narrative that people who were brought here as children illegally are somehow dreamers, and they give them this really rosy outlook. But what about the people who already live here, who their children have been killed by illegal aliens? Most recently, this week, it's been a 2-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy, both killed by drunk drivers who happen to be in the country illegally. Why don't we, or the Republicans or the conservatives, whoever they are on the right, why don't they use those stories and tug on the heartstrings of Americans to say, look, here's a 3-year-old who's never going to grow up to be an adult, who's never going to get to have a dream about what they want to do with their life because they've been killed by an illegal alien?
Well, listen, you're absolutely right, and I think that they should. I mean, if you really think about it, and it's funny that you bring up that ridiculous polling. If you look at the results of the last election, there were so many one-issue voters that voted for Trump because of his hardline stance on illegal immigration. So, where they're pulling those numbers from, obviously, it's a fake poll, to coin a phrase, or actually to use a phrase that Donald Trump has used before. But, I mean, it's not true. Ultimately what we're going to have to do, maybe that's the messaging. It's time to get them, anyone who's not here legally, who's come into this country legally, is subjected to the laws of the country, which say that they should be detained, processed, and deported. We have to open up, I think, better dialogue as well with these countries and set up a mechanism to where we get these people back to them too, because there has to be some accountability on that side as well. People people bring up the argument that, Mexico has its own border to keep people from other countries out, to keep the Guatemalans out. Why are they afforded that luxury and we're not? Obviously there's a cost. I'm sure there's some diplomatic cost between Guatemala and Mexico in the way that they handle getting Guatemalans out of Mexico. Why can't we apply that to our country in a stronger manner? Because the problem really, quite frankly, is so widespread. Nobody's, beating down the door, quite frankly, to get to Mexico. Most of them are just transient, moving towards up, going north to America.
Yeah.
So we've got to set this, stronger as far as our diplomatic standpoint, our diplomatic stand as far as how we're going to deal with these countries whose citizens have fled their conditions there to come here.
Yeah, okay, you're dead on. So I bring this up sometimes too, Julio, and I just get crickets when I say, look, Mexico just recently, it's not like it's been there 40 or 50 years. It's recent. They built a wall to prevent Guatemalans from coming and crossing through their country. Whether the Guatemalans are attempting to stay in Mexico, which is still an improvement compared to their own country, or if they're continuing on, which the majority of them are trying to make their way through to get to America, the point is they were experiencing an uptick in crime, and it was hurting their social services as such as they might be. So there is a lot of room here, in my opinion, for messaging surrounding not just the things you've outlined about security, but the wall specifically. And I know that E-Verify would completely, we'd have such a good mechanism for reducing illegal immigration that it's amazing that we haven't done that yet in the technology age, where someone right now knows exactly where you are in the building where you're sitting, and someone else knows exactly where I'm sitting in my house because I have my cell phone nearby. I mean, it's in an era where a satellite could literally beam a laser in here and zap me. We're still not using E-Verify. You know what I mean?
Well,
it's
they don't
crazy.
Want to. Stacy, they don't want to.
Well,
and I think honestly, there's a lot more Republicans that if they're transparent and they're honest, you could see it that they don't want it either. I mean, they have big money donors, Chamber of Commerce type people putting money into their pockets, funding their campaigns. They don't want the hardline stance on this because of the fact that they're going to lose their cheap labor. That's unfortunately a byproduct of, maybe I guess American entitlement. These people feel that Americans don't want to take the jobs, one, and two, you got these people that are willing to, either break the law or bend the laws. You get so many people that come in here on these temporary visa programs for special projects, and they never leave, and then they go work for somebody else while they're here, whether it be under the table or what have you.
Well, and I have to say, the studies have shown that Americans will do the jobs, but they just expect 15-minute breaks. They expect, a regular work day. It's not that I think it's a misnomer when we say Americans won't do the jobs. They'll do them. They just expect to have regular work conditions, where someone who's here illegally might hate their work conditions, but they won't complain because they know they're here illegally. So it's really people who want to take advantage of other people, and they're doing it because we're letting them, because we don't have E-Verify. And I feel like we need the wall because a physical barrier is something that a change in administration cannot undo. In other words, the wall would be there, and they'd have to literally pay to tear it down, whereas with E-Verify, that's mandatory law. But if you have a change in administration, you can have someone issue an executive order, say a Democrat who's president, and he can say, we no longer enforce E-Verify provisions, like they did with so many other things. And that would be the law of the land for the 8 years that the Democrat was in charge. So the wall, while it sounds expensive, it's not more expensive than what we pay on illegal immigration a year. $130 billion a year we're paying. The wall's only $26 billion. It pays for itself in a quarter.
It's not going to solve everything. I mean, the people will go over the wall. Believe me, they'll go under the wall.
I believe
they'll figure out ways to get around it. I don't think it's that. I think it's more about the enforcement and changing the environment in America and the way and our disposition, quite frankly, to illegal immigrants and the people that and the people that employ them and the people that kind of enable them to be here. I think that ultimately, once people realize that, listen, I'm going to go broke here, nobody's going to take the risk of getting fined, hundreds of thousands. Hiring illegals.
We're up
so
against
there's
the break.
No opportunity.
Thank you so much, Julio. You've been fantastic. It's been great to speak with you, and we'll be right back with more. Stay there.
I just thank God for the Holy Ghost. If you will let him, he really will teach you all things. Have you ever made an excuse to someone why you were unable to do something or why you couldn't attend a certain event instead of just being honest and telling them you just were not interested? I think many of us have. Well, that's lying. Proverbs chapter 12 verse 17 says, an honest witness tells the truth. A false witness tells lies. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 1 in one translation says, dishonesty in business disgusts the eternal. It disgusts God. But fair dealing delights him. false witness utters lies. Be faithful and consistent with being honest with others. Stop with the excuses and be truthful. There is freedom when our integrity and character reflects our Savior Jesus Christ. What seems little to us are big to Him. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victory McIntosh. Connect with us more at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hi, I'm Shane. My drinking got so bad that my friends would drag me into my parents' house unconscious. But here at Teen Challenge, I'm finally alcohol-free. And if you think I'm happy, you should see my parents.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
Equipped with Chris Brooks.
This program is an apologetic endeavor. We tackle news, current events, cultural trends, and phenomenons from a Christian worldview perspective. Why? Because we're looking for insights into culture that will allow us to more effectively, more contextualize the gospel so that we can reach men and women for Christ.
Get equipped with Chris Brooks.
Join me Monday through Friday at noon Central Time on Urban Family Talk.
Every human life, so irreplaceable. I can't imagine life without you, it's just unthinkable. There's no one like you, no one like you. You're 1 in 7 billion. There's no one like you, no one like you.
We are all created by God with undeniable purpose. Learn more about beautiful possibility at www.radiance.life. Follow us on Twitter at Life Has Purpose.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Speak today about the so-called Schumer Amendment. Now, that's not the name that some people give it, but I'll give it that name. Abraham Lincoln said, if you call a dog's tail a leg, how many legs has a dog? 5? No, it has 4, because calling something doesn't make it that. In the same way, you can call a bill bipartisan because there are some Republicans on that bill, and if the Republicans have simply acquiesced to the Democrats' position, it's a Democratic bill. Calling it bipartisan doesn't make it so. Let's just walk through a few of the weaknesses of this bill. So, first, the enforcement holiday for illegal immigration. You might call it the Ollie Ollie Oxenfree position, because it declares to anyone worldwide, if you get to the United States in the next 4 months before June 30th, 2018, Ollie Ollie Oxenfree, the Department of Homeland Security will not enforce our laws against you. Don't take my word for it. Look at it right here. In fact, it was done in handwriting last night. I suspect some of my Republican colleagues on this bill didn't even know that this change was made. It used to be January 1, 2018, and you had to be present for at least 5.5 years. That's not great, but it's better than a prospective enforcement holiday that says if you get to this country illegally in the next 4 months, we will not make you an enforcement priority. So come on in, everyone. If you get here by June 30th under this amendment, the Department of Homeland Security will not make it a priority to enforce our laws against you. Second, let's look at the amnesty that it provides. Now, the president has been extraordinarily generous in his offer to our Democratic colleagues.
Wow. So I want to first of all welcome back to the show. That was a fantastic interview with Julio Rivera, obviously an expert on this topic, happens to be, obviously of Hispanic orientation, but still believes in legal immigration. And he represents just tens of millions of people from that background who are literally they're hopping mad because they spent the time and the money and the effort to come here legally. And now they're being shunted aside for this new deal, which is, legalization, amnesty, and rule breaking as the law of the land. So I really appreciate his time today and hope to speak with him again. So you were just listening to Tom Cotton on the floor of the House talking about the Democrats' obfuscation and how it's in the details. Now, actually, we're going to hear that up on the next segment, but actually that I just told you the wrong title for that one. It's the best explanation of the only bill worth passing, which is the Grassley bill. And he's criticizing the Schumer amendment and saying calling it bipartisan doesn't make it so. Just like calling those polls, the fake polls that we can't seem to find any data on, that 88% of Americans favor legalization. That's just poppycock. It's not true. It's just peddling of untrue facts. They're not facts if they're untrue, right? I mean, our language here is so iffy. It's so iffy. It's almost hard to discuss. So right now I want to go to the phones, and then we're going to keep delving through this issue because I have some information for you that I want to share. And I've got a really interesting piece. You guys might remember Christina Rabali, who was moved on to another not-for-profit situation. But she used to be over the nonprofits area. She was a director over at the Foundation for Government Accountability, FGA. And so they have a new report out that calls for work requirements for able-bodied parents on food stamps. And there's some really interesting data in here. I mean, just amazing data on able-bodied people who are currently receiving food stamps. So we've got problems all over the government. This isn't in any way, shape, or form me saying that, illegal aliens are the only problem we have in this country. But this is the discussion we're having right now because of the bills that are currently before the Congress. So right now, let's talk to Patsy from New York City. And she has a question about the illegals. Patsy, thanks for calling the show.
Yes, I'm here. Hello?
Oh, hi. Yeah, hi. Thanks for calling in.
Hello, how are you? My name is Patsy Smith. How are you doing?
Good, I'm doing well.
Here. Oh, okay. So first of all, I want to let you know that I am the 2%er. That means the 2% that never did vote for Obama and who did their homework and knew that he was illegal. My second thing is the DACA. There's a problem with the DACA and the illegals that are coming here that everybody seems to put their head in the sand about. Okay, but the problem is that the construction work that is going all through black neighborhoods, hospitals and schools, the sanctuary cities that I live in, like Chicago and in New York, they only have Mexicans and Spanish people. Why? Isn't that racist? Would that not be? I mean, people really need to do the survey and go around and count how many other than Mexicans and Spanish are working in construction in America now. It has become very racist. They don't hire blacks. I know my brother lost his job over 20 years ago because Spanish people were cheap labor. However, they go back. They have to constantly go back to repair the horrible work that they do. So that's what keeps them above water, that our black men are going back behind their work to repair it. And this has been going on for a good 20 years. Black men in construction is really scuffling while the Mexicans and illegals are getting over and no one is addressing it. And I think it's very, very terrible. And the second thing I want to let everybody know how the Mexicans feel about it when I address them about it. They said, well, you black folks ain't never did nothing but pick cotton anyway, and they enjoy taking our jobs. This is a problem, and no one is paying any attention to it. It's been going on for a good 20 years. The construction workers in Harlem and in Chicago, because I now live in Harlem, my brothers who were construction workers, they're scuffling, and they have been 20 good years. It's terrible why they want to make Mexicans do our neighborhoods.
Thank you so much for these comments, and thank you for sharing your story about that. And so this is something that if you go into some of the smaller blogs, you'll see it being written about. And if you talk to people like our caller Patsy in predominantly black neighborhoods, they'll tell you all of these contracts for these projects, especially if they're for the government, they're minority-owned firms because there's a woman who's on the letterhead of the firm, the construction firm. But it's really her husband who runs the business. And he has a group of his paid staff who head up the teams for the construction jobs. But the actual construction workers, the huge labor teams that they have who come in and do the majority of the heavy lifting, those are often illegal aliens. And so it depends on where you are. In the larger cities like Chicago and New York, it is well documented and easily proven. If you don't believe it, go on YouTube, watch the videos of people talking about it there. Look at the stories. We're not talking about on ABC. You're not going to find stories about this on NBC or CBS, but you'll find people blogging about it, and you'll find people on YouTube talking about it and talking about how there are whole communities of men, able-bodied men who want to work, but because they won't work for $14 a day, or because they're legal citizens and they have to be paid. And then, obviously you have to pay them as an independent contractor or a day laborer, or you have to pay them as an employee, which means you also have to put in for their Social Security. They don't have a chance. They don't have a chance because if you go to the same corners in the city, you'll find illegal aliens grouped together waiting, and they get picked up in a van and taken to the construction site. And at the end of the day, they're paid in cash, and then they get dropped off at the same corner and they go back to their homes. How is this okay? And I know for Democrats, it's never an issue of them caring about somebody. Like, they totally care about people who are killed, and as they should, in these horrible school shootings. Democrats cry, like Jimmy Kimmel's been on TV crying again. But they don't care anything about aborted unborn babies. They don't care about that. They don't give a hoot about people who are killed by illegal aliens. So it's kind of situational with them, which is why I don't buy it. If Jimmy Kimmel would get on TV every night and cry for all of the tragic situations that exist, then it'd be one thing. But for him to only cry about the children who were killed in the school shooting yesterday, which, by the way, let me issue a correction right here on the show. I want to make sure and get it in the center of the program, so it's not up close to the break. There's no way you're getting away with me not correcting what I said yesterday, which was that there are 15 school shootings in America since the first of the year. There have only been 5. Those others, the 13 others that Democrats are lumping into that total, and it's one of those nebulous facts that you repeat it often enough and people pick it up. And I saw it on a conservative website that I trust, but that it's not been 15. It's not been 18. It's been 5. Remember, a school shooting, in order for it to count as a school shooting, a mass shooting, more than one person has to be shot. I mean, there have to be parameters of some sort. Can we agree on that? So more than one person has to be shot, and students, obviously, and it has to be on school grounds. So if the attack is thwarted, no one is shot. Or if it's thwarted, one person is shot, and that person is the actual shooter, then that doesn't count as a school shooting because it was avoided. So if you go look at the data, we have not had 13 or 15 or 18. We have had 5 since January 1st. Now, that correction has been issued. My mistake for not double checking. I was busy reading up on the actual stats about the shooter, which, again, another correction. He was adopted from Russia. I didn't say where yesterday. And he actually came into the country as a baby, and they raised him, and he had, detachment disorder and a whole lot of other things that come along with these kind of international adoptions from these third world pits like Russia. And yeah, I just said that. When you look at how they treat their orphans and their children, they're a third world pit. So they may be very industrialized and they may be a part of the first world, but when you look at how their government treats orphans, that's not first world treatment that those kids get. So when you adopt a baby from Russia, sometimes they come with detachment disorder and they're malnourished and they have a lot of health problems. And so he came with some of those things, and he's had trouble all along. 39 trips from the police to his house, 39 visits or response calls. And his father died when he was 13, his adopted father, and his mother died in the fall, as I reported yesterday, from the flu, the horrible flu virus that's been sweeping through the country and killing otherwise healthy people. His mom fell to that. So in the long and short of it, the Democrats are only using whoever is convenient to get their points across. And they don't care about the DACA recipients. They don't care about their so-called dreamers, because if they did, they would jump on the deal to legalize 1.8 million of them. They would absolutely be ecstatic. They would say, you know what? The future illegal aliens don't mean anything. We want to help the ones who, as Julio just explained, as so many people who've come on the show and talked about, some of them are serving in the military. Some of them have gone to college. They've done extraordinary things while they've been here. They're trying to prove, I belong here. I'm an American. I don't know any other country. Please don't look at me as an illegal alien. And if we put the shoe on the other foot, we can understand why they would want to act like that. Now, that doesn't mean I think they should stay here, but this is the point that's being made by so many people who support them staying here. So if the Democrats really supported them staying here, we wouldn't be talking about different iterations of some bill. The Democrats would have said, you lay legalization on the table for them, we sign the bill. They say they want a clean DACA bill. This is as clean as it gets. Ending chain migration. It doesn't even have mandatory E-Verify. And all this trust fund garbage is crazy. We need funding for the wall and immediate completion. In other words, the start of a project that has an end date and a payment to the contractor or contractors for early completion, like it was with the Trump International Hotel DC, like it was with so many of Donald Trump's successful real estate ventures where he does a project, he purchases a piece of property or a building and remodels it, and it's a multi-year project. He usually gives a bonus for early completion and another bonus for early completion under budget. Why do we not have the same thing going on with the wall? As a part of the infrastructure project, one portion of the funds goes to build a wall with a completion date of December of 2019. And it's, you choose a contractor, you give them a bonus if they complete it early and get started. This is not hard. So the fact that the Democrats won't do that shows you where they are. Now, another issue that the Democrats are on the wrong side of is, as I just was explaining to you, FGA having their new report out of Naples, Florida, and that's where they're located. That's where their headquarters is. The Foundation for Government Accountability, they actually have people operating in all of the states. You can check your state and find out if they're operating in your state. All of the work that they do is to help people who are currently receiving welfare get off of welfare through the learning of new skills and completion of programs that help them to be basically like you and me. So they're at a place where they're receiving some kind of government benefit and they need it. And so in order to get off of it, you have to reduce the need. That's what the Foundation for Government Accountability does. It goes in and it talks to states and says, did you know that if you change this aspect of your, say, food stamp program, more people will work their way off of it and into the kind of train where they're working towards the American dream? What can be better than that? So that's why I totally support what they do. Here's what the report found. 52% of able-bodied parents on food stamps do not work at all. Dependency on food stamps has reached record highs, surpassing 12 million able-bodied parents receiving full assistance. Work requirements should be expanded to able-bodied parents who are on food stamps in order to reduce those negative numbers. Again, where are the Democrats on this? They say they care about the poor. They care about the indigent. They say they want to help, but they would never support this. Wake up and smell the coffee. It's hot. It's piping fresh, and they're not making it. I am. I'm making it right here on the show. Look, we'll be back with hour 2 of Stacy on the right after these messages. Keep it here.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk is that alternative radio network because we choose to infuse Jesus in everything we do.
We count it a blessing to be able to speak with integrity and to speak honestly on the issues.
Thank you for joining us, partnering with us, being a part of
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk, so that we can stand for the gospel.
Truth. Wisdom. Empowerment. Urban Family Talk. A ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News on the Hour, I'm Chris Woodward. A federal investigation into Russia's alleged interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election results in more than a dozen indictments. Fox's John Decker continues our coverage.
The indictment charges brought by special counsel Robert Mueller alleges that the defendants and their co-conspirators used fictitious online personas to interfere with the 2016 presidential election. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein.
They used stolen or fictitious American identities, fraudulent bank accounts, and false identification documents.
The Russian nationals are accused of spreading derogatory information about Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton and supporting Democratic candidate Bernie Sanders and then Republican candidate Donald Trump. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
One of the world's largest casino companies will check its hotel rooms every 24 hours, even if a guest has a Do Not Disturb sign on the doorknob. Caesars Entertainment has become the latest hospitality firm to adopt new room check policies after a gunman fired on an outdoor concert from his Las Vegas hotel room in October, killing 58 people and injuring hundreds before killing himself. Caesars tells the Associated Press it also is considering giving panic buttons to its employees to enable them to quickly summon help if they are in danger or feel threatened. Disney, Hilton, Wynn Resorts, and Boyd Gaming also have updated their room check policies. Another potentially deadly attack on a school has been thwarted by a grandmother. Fox's Trace Gallagher explains.
While the high school shooting was happening in Parkland, Florida, across the country in Washington state, another student was in court accused of plotting to bomb and shoot his fellow classmates in Everett, Washington. Joshua O'Connor was turned in by his grandmother, who found his journal entries that said he was preparing himself for a school shooting and that his shot had gotten more accurate. He also wrote that he had learned a lot from past school shooters and wanted the death toll to be as high as possible.
Police arrested O'Connor at school, where he was found carrying marijuana and a knife. Investigators later executed a search warrant on the grandmother's home where O'Connor lived and where they seized the journal, a rifle, and grenades. This nasty flu season, which has been worsening for months, may finally be leveling off. Health officials on Friday said about 1 out of every 13 visits to the doctor last week was for fever, cough, or other flu symptoms. That's still nearly as high as it's been in a decade, but it's no worse than last week. It had been increasing each week since November. In final news this hour, AFR listeners are making a difference with a partnership with India Partners. AFN's Charlie Butts reports.
The organization is determined to make that difference in red light districts where impoverished children as young as 8, mostly girls, are sold daily for prostitution, a huge problem in large cities in India. The organization takes them to safe houses where they are taught English, educated, and helped to heal and restored through Christ. Spokesman David Harm says story after story points to the success of the program.
I talked to a boy that was rescued 20 years ago. He's now in bioengineering. I mean, it's just crazy, the amazing things that happen when a child is told their rights, that they do not have to be sold, that they have rights, that they can be safe in these safe houses.
Others are in high-tech and education positions. Because of AFR listener donations, India Partners has been able to expand by hiring more staff to work where it's most effective.
So now we have an extremely strong presence in the red light district every single day, establishing the relationships, teaching things like sewing and craft making and cooking and these kind of things. So these women can feel and these girls can feel like they have a trade when they can get out, right? Just start them with some kind of hope that they don't have to do what they're doing, that they can make money other ways.
Because of that, India Partners in 2017 doubled the number of women, girls, and boys rescued compared to 2016. So, Harm says the problem is being resolved one person at a time from the inside out. I'm Charlie Butts.
And that's all our time for this hour. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
Physicians keep learning after medical school in order to better save lives. Shouldn't Christian leaders keep learning to better save souls? Hi, I'm Dr. John Nyhoff, president of Wesley Biblical Seminary in Jackson, Mississippi, and online around the world. Are you a Christian leader who thinks it's important to keep learning? WBS online weekend and evening classes allow graduate students to become better equipped to make disciples in a constantly changing world. For more information, visit wbs.edu.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
He didn't say legal status for 690,000 people who are enrolled in the Obama-era DACA program. He said citizenship. He said a full opportunity for citizenship for 1.8 million people. 1.8 million people who are not just enrolled in the program, but would have been eligible for the program had they enrolled. This amendment would expand that to almost 3 to 4 million people by lifting the age limits, by lifting the age caps. A vast amnesty of just among those younger people of a quarter of the people who are here in this country illegally. But third, it gets even worse than that. The entire rationale of the DACA program is that children ought not pay for the sins of their parents. How about the parents pay for the sins of the parents? This bill would allow the effective legalization of the very parents who created this problem in the first place. Now, the sponsors of this amendment will say, no, we prohibit the parents from getting legal status. Let's look at how they do that. They say that no person can receive legal status if the Department of Homeland Security can show they knowingly assisted the entry of a minor into this country. Now tell me how the Department of Homeland Security is supposed to make that showing. How are they supposed to go back 10, 15, 20, 25 years and show that this illegal immigrant knowingly brought that person into this country? It's preposterous.
It is. It's utterly preposterous. I mean, when you're thinking about what the Democrats are proposing here, first of all, they're making amendments, just handwriting them in the margins. In other words, we know this will never go through, so we'll just handwrite it on here. And if the bill passes, it's on there. And so they, it's your own fault for not reading it all the way through. How much more underhanded can you get? So again, that's Tom Cotton. He's on the floor making this speech about what exactly is happening in our Congress. This is what is going on. I mean, and if you're surprised, if you're sitting there and you're going, yeah, this can't be right. What reason does he have to lie? It is in the Republicans' best interest to get the Democrats to actually follow through on what they have as their stated purpose, which is they're singularly minded about taking care of these illegal aliens who are in the country. That's their primary concern, not the black unemployment rate being the lowest it's ever been in 17 years, not taking care of the out of wedlock birth rate for all Americans, which currently stands at just at 40%, not taking care of the fact that the median income is kind of stagnant for Americans at $55,000 for a family of four, not the horrible statistic of, even though it's the best numbers we've had in a decade, we're looking at an abortion rate of 958,000 a year per 2016 numbers from the Guttmacher Institute, Planned Parenthood's arm. They keep track of all the abortions, gleefully tallying up every one. Or our foreign policy problems that we're having with Kim Jong-un. The Democrats have to admit that there are a ton of problems facing this country. On the local level, we have the opioid epidemic, which is roiling suburban neighborhoods across the country with kids who have been raised in church and are absolutely, full of potential, literally becoming addicted to opioids that are the pills that are in their parents' medicine cabinet. And after numerous attempts at kicking the habit, these kids are overdosing and dying on the vine. We literally have that going on. And then we have this untold potential explosion of more attempted murders and actual murders from average, everyday suburban and urban kids who are being bullied, who are mentally unstable, children who need to be under a doctor's care and supervision, kids coming from homes where the parents are overworked and overtired. They're not properly focusing on these young men. And these boys are taking out their frustration by getting explosives, learning how to make weapons on Facebook, and attempting to go and murder their classmates. I mean, we've had a bullying situation in our family where one of our children was being bullied by someone. And as horrible as that was, I would never, ever say, well, the answer is you got to go kill some people. Absolutely not. No way. So we have a problem. We have a lot of problems socially, culturally. All of these things, we have problems. So the issue is, what do we, like, the Democrats just want to deal with the DACA. That's all they care about. And the rest of us can just, I guess, I don't know. The rest of us can just deal with our own issues, because I guess the only thing that matters right now is dreamers. And so you've got, Cotton detailing the what's going on here in his speech. And I guess just for me, I want to see some kind of reasoning behind all of these things that they're saying that they need to do. I understand the emotional pull. I understand people saying, these people were brought here through no fault of their own. It's not like I can't understand the reasoning behind some of what they're saying. But the idea that we can't stop chain migration, something we didn't cover on the show this week. A number of the liberals were on television, the mainstream media cable channels, talking this week about how Donald Trump's immigration proposal makes America white again because it pushes off the year in which whites become the minority in America by 5 years through the end of chain migration. Now, why would that be something they would be focusing on? Why are the Democrats intentionally trying to radically adjust the makeup of America from one race being in the majority to another? What do they get out of that? And see, this is where the critical thinking comes into play, because I'm not white. So if they're advocating for for whites to become the minority in America and they think that's a good thing, I'm not going to say one way or the other whether it is a good thing. What I want to know is why. Why is it a good thing, according to the Democrats, for whites to become the minority? Why are they pushing for that to happen by bringing in people from countries where the people they're bringing in are low skilled and the people themselves want to recreate the conditions from the country that they're immigrating from? In other words, people coming here who don't want to take part in all of our fancy technology and our wonderful, the whole bathroom thing is big for me. Like, if you want to come to America and you're not into using indoor plumbing and using the bathroom privately into a receptacle, you don't belong here. I mean, and if you're offended, I'm glad. I hope you are so triggered right now. I hope you're triggered like you're shaking mad and your skin is on fire from you being so upset with what I just said. And brace yourself. Those people don't belong here. You belong in a society, as they on the sci-fi. You guys know how I love my sci-fi references. And here comes another one. In the Star Trek universe and so many other sci-fi worlds, they always say that the more advanced society, when they make first contact with the new race of people or aliens or whatever. And when they get there, if they arrive and they can see from space, or they go down and they send a little away team and they arrive on the planet and the people are like 3 or 4 generations behind the arriving delegation, if you will, in their advancement. In other words, they're not even to the industrial age. Then they just quietly extract themselves and they put a note in their little computer to check back around in another 50 to 75 or even 100 years. And the reason they do that is because they know that if you dump a whole bunch of technology on a population of people and they haven't advanced to a place where they can receive it or learn what you're talking about, then it does no good. We see the ramifications of that in the Middle East. And please miss me with your whole, the Ottoman Empire created math. I know the history. I'm talking about right now. Right now, you know, not a lot of paved roads, a lot of barbaric activities, sex with children, regular, just all kinds of weird stuff going on. And we're supposed to take people who are coming from an environment like that and just drop them in the middle of America and expect them not to use the bathroom outside or rape kids or blow stuff up when they get angry. Just indiscriminate mayhem. You get mad, you go figure out how to blow something up, you get radicalized. Even fly yourself in a modern air conveyance over to the Middle East, train with ISIS, then come back to this country that has taken you in and blow some people up. Make a bomb out of a pressure cooker. I mean, I hope you're triggered. That this is almost the point of this whole conversation about immigration. You ought to be triggered. But not because what I just said. You should be triggered because that is our immigration policy right now. Find the people who are least likely to assimilate into American culture, the people who are most likely to blow other people up just because they're angry about something, and bring them over. Quick, get them over here as quick as you can. Really? So, I mean, as Julio pointed out in the first hour, Julio Rivera, editorial director for reactionarytimes.com, the problem that we have is not just with the Democrats on the immigration issue. It's also with the Republicans, because there's a huge part of the Republican Party, business owners and people like that, who, unfortunately, by all appearances, they seem to be individuals who like to take advantage of people. And so they'd rather hire illegal aliens, because illegal aliens aren't going to complain about not getting breaks. They're not going to want the standard minimum wage. Illegal aliens aren't worried about $15 an hour. They're thinking, you know, almost anything over $1 an hour is awesome, as long as we can make our rent payment and buy some food, because they're in such a much better place than where they came from. So Tom Cotton, as always, Senator Cotton always comes out swinging with the facts. And the stuff that he's sharing about these negotiations, it doesn't put the Democrats in a good light. It doesn't make them look good. Now, he used the term ollie ollie oxen free. He says, you might call it the ollie ollie oxen free position. We just heard him say that. And what he means is ollie ollie oxen free is like, it's a holiday. Do whatever you want. Because the Democrats are proposing that for the next 4 months, all of our immigration laws are suspended. I mean, can you imagine? Every law having to do with enforcement would be suspended. Now, the Democrats will tell you, if you ask a Democrat, they'll say, oh my goodness, you know what's so fun? All the best people will come in. No, MS-13 will pour in. Anybody who's a criminal will pour in. People who've been deported multiple times will pour back in. No enforcement means free for all, which means anarchy, more dead Americans, more dead American children. For people who are currently on television right now crying about kids who were killed in this shooting at that high school in Florida, they're crying about that, but they never shed a tear for Kate Steinle. They never seem to care at all when other children are killed if their murderer is an illegal alien. So I thank God that Senator Cotton got on the floor of the Senate and explained this and let us know what's really going on behind the scenes in our government. We're paying these people $178 large a year to go in and basically act like they're illegal themselves. That's the Democrats right now, the elected ones. They're acting like illegals themselves. They're acting like lawbreakers, people who don't respect the law. You know what the Bible says about that. Well, first of all, you will know them by their fruit. And also, that's what evil people do. Their feet run swiftly to commit improper acts, and their tongues are forked like serpents, and they're always lying. I didn't write it. Anyway, let's go to the phones. It looks like we have Bob from Wyoming. Jade's doing the call screen. Awesome. Thanks, Jade. Hey, Bob. Thank you for calling.
Hi.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Well, I've been listening to you quite a bit, and you're talking about the bullying in school and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up being bullied from grade school all the way to high school. I almost killed myself. But my Bible was on my bed. The gun was on my bed. The Bible opened up to, I will never leave you or forsake you.
Mm-hmm.
So I put the gun up, and never thought about it again. You know, these people who get bullied and they go and kill people, the only thing they need is God. And they can work through anything with God. And I've proven that by what I've went through. You know, my parents basically bullied me too, saying, you're too stupid to do that. You're too stupid to do that. And my brothers did too. And it's like, okay, you know, I am. I believe them. I finally went to college when I was 40 years old. I ended up getting a 4.0 my last semester. And God said, hey, you know, I told you you're smart. Look it. And, you know, that's what I don't understand why people use the excuse of being bullied to kill somebody.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And we're up against the break, and I just want to say thanks so much for calling and sharing that. And you're right. And I talked about that a little bit yesterday, how we need to give these kids the proper supervision, and they need Jesus Christ in these high schools. Without him, we're going to see more of these kinds of behaviors. That's what we're seeing. So, you know, we can't deny what's before our very eyes. Thank you so much for calling. We're going to have more Stacy on the Right and more of your calls, 866-963-2037. We'll be right back with more after these messages.
Hey, my name's Brant. You ever make a change and then wonder, why didn't I do this a long time ago? That's what's happening for thousands of people with regard to their health care. They're joining MediShare, and then they're wondering, why didn't I already do this? For most members, it costs less than half what they were paying for their old health plan. There's a huge provider network, too. You can customize your plan, and This is awesome. Medishare members can go online with a doctor 24/7. So if you need a prescription for the flu or something, it's so convenient for you and your family. So yeah, this is one of those why did I wait on this things. And if you don't love your current health plan, you're not stuck with it. You can join Medishare anytime. By the way, to give you an idea, the typical savings for a family, about $500 a month. It just makes so much sense. Check it out. They're super easy to talk to. Call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
Hello, this is Bishop Harry Jackson of Hope Christian Church in Beltsville, Maryland. Jesus said, you would do greater works than he did. Despise not the days of small beginnings. Despise not small beginnings. We've got to evaluate the fact that when God calls you to something powerful, what he essentially says is, think big, because I'm big. Think like there is a big, big, big thing, but I want you to start small. Start small. In other words, align yourself to an architectural plan. Just recently, one of my spiritual sons and members of our communion of churches launched a church in a particular city, and it was an amazing success. Hundreds of people showed up, but nobody in the Johnny-come-lately microwave age would want to think. Nearly 2 years of prayer went into the big opening. Nearly 2 years of dragging yourself to a meeting that you feel like, I'm a little bit tired, I don't want to go tonight. Nearly 2 years of praying, fasting, seeking God on the regular have been invested so that God at a certain moment can breathe upon you and use your little stuff in a big, big way. God says, hey, if you do my will, I'm not only going to back you in ways you have never seen, I'm going to protect, I'm going to provide, and I'm going to be with you. Join us this Sunday morning at 6251 Amandale Road in Beltsville or on the web at thehopeconnection.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
It's the exact reason why so many immigration bills have failed for so many years in this body. Because the Democrats write bills that they claim does one thing when in reality it does the exact opposite thing. The exact opposite thing. Fourth, they say that it reforms chain migration or at least make down payment on it. Here's what it actually does. It briefly delays a tiny, tiny class of persons from being sponsored by newly legalized immigrants. Only about 25,000 per year of the adult children of green card holders. It takes those and applies them to other adult children, and when those immigrants become a citizen, guess what? They get to sponsor their adult children again. So it makes, in practice, not a single change to the practice of extended family chain migration, which is responsible for so much of the unskilled and low-skilled immigration we've had in this country over the last 40 years. It makes no changes whatsoever to the diversity lottery, not a single one. Not a single one, even though every other provision under serious consideration has at least eliminated that lottery and reallocated those green cards towards other purposes like clearing out that family-based backlog, clearing out the high-skilled backlog.
Oh, man. So, again, he's just exploring what it is that the Democrats are proposing. And if you thought they might tone down the radical nature of what they want for our immigration system because they want to get the DACA recipients legalized, then you might have missed the program where I explained that all they're doing is horse trading. So they wanted the DACA recipients legalized in 2018 because that would be a continuation, basically a rubber stamp of the Obama legacy of the pen and the phone and his extrajudicial actions outside of his purview in the executive in legalizing these people, in deferring the normal application of the law against what they broke the law. The natural result is that they would be the law would be enforced. And so Barack Obama stopped that. Now, here you've got Donald Trump, who has run on immigration as his signature issue, and he's coming into the office saddled with this problem left to him by his predecessor. And he's promised voters who turned out for him and put him in the presidency that he's going to take care of the problem. He quickly begins to realize that working with the Democrats isn't going to be anything like it was when he used to write checks to them sometimes when he was just the doyen of New York. He was just, large and in charge in New York City and donating to Chuck Grassley and other Democrats there because he needed access. So at this point, now he's got to craft a deal. He puts together what I don't like it, legalization for 1.8 million DACA recipients. He tacks on an extra million of them. In other words, he's saying, now the ball is in your court. And the Democrats have said, 1.8 million. But wait, look, he's funding the border wall. That's not going to help us. He's got something in here about ending chain migration. That doesn't help us. He wants to end the visa lottery, the diversity lottery. That doesn't help us. And so they counted the cost, and the DACA recipients aren't worth them losing those other three items, which is what makes the offer so it's kind of ingenious. It's devilishly ingenious. So Tom Cotton continues his details and his criticism of what is going on. Obviously, the Department of Homeland Security does not have the resources in which to pinpoint how every person who was brought here as a child, who brought them here, whether it was their parents or whether they crossed over on their own as unaccompanied minors. The documentation on that would be something that it could be easily located for one and never located for anyone else. So why put the onus on the Department of Homeland Security? He also, Senator Cotton talks about the provisions on chain migration and the southern border wall. The bill, which eventually went on to fail 54-45, had zero chance of becoming law because the White House opposed it. President Trump issued a veto threat. He said, there's no way that's going to be the law. There's no way that's the deal I'm signing. So I'm feeling pretty confident that, as others have said, that the DACA fix is not going to be a fix and nothing's going to happen with it. And now I understand why so many of the decades that have gone by before I was ever politically active, when I was a young mom with small kids and pull-ups and diapers, and I would always wonder why, no matter who was in charge, they couldn't seem to get any immigration reform done, because this has been a hot topic. This isn't the first time this has been raised up to a national issue. And this is why, because whenever the Republicans come up with some common sense immigration reform, the Democrats just basically say it's better for us to leave things as they are now and wait and fix it later when we're in charge. And then when they try to fix it, they don't have the votes, because they rarely have 70 or 80 votes or veto-proof majority in either house, in both houses at the same time, and the presidency. It just, the American voters don't want to give anybody a blank check. That's the way I see it. So, there it is. Now, we have had some people talking about the bullying issue, the school shootings. We definitely delved into that yesterday when we were talking about the audio from Megyn Kelly, who she knew what she was doing when she made that segment and talked and called out the NRA. She's going to slowly but surely earn her way back into the good graces of the left. She's at NBC, and that contract she has is pretty ironclad because her ratings were bad for a while, but she's still there. And so she's going to have to earn her way in. And this is one of the ways she's going to do it, is by flip-flopping on guns, because she's never been anti-gun before. And I pointed that out yesterday on the show about her. She's never been anti-NRA before. So her statements, to me, they ring a little bit hollow. It doesn't pass the smell test to me that all of a sudden she's like totally against the NRA. So in all of these things, when we're talking about the what happened with this kid, there was also the story of the grandmother, and you heard that at the top of the hour as well, or coming in from this break, or at the top. AFR is reporting that, there's this grandmother who realized in her son's journal, that her grandson's journal, that he was planning on doing something horrible, and she turned him into the police, which, if you think about it, that took a lot of guts on her part. If you take yourself out of wherever you are with your kids, if you have grandkids, if you don't have grandkids, if you don't have any kids at all, it is very hard to report a family member for something that they haven't done yet. because you don't know. You're like, maybe they could just be blowing off steam, and I am reading their journal. I'm invading their privacy. But that's part of what I want to discuss right now about this whole issue with the kids and the boys being unsupervised and parents feeling like their kids have privacy. That is something that Hollywood has made you think is a thing. As a parent, if you're paying for their phone or they're living in your house lock, stock, and barrel, that is your child. That's your grandchild. It's your niece. It's your nephew. It's your ward. It's, the person is a minor and they live with you. What do you mean their privacy? Aside from their person, meaning they have the ability to use the restroom and shower and be private and not have you busting in, everything else is on the table. There is no off limits. There is no, this is my phone, you can't know the lock code. I know all the lock codes for my kids' phones. That doesn't mean I'm up every night reading every message they've got or, going through all of their stuff. But it means if I need to, if I see one of my children acting in a way that I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm concerned. What is going on with my child? It's not that I can't pick their phone up and unlock it and get into it and see what's going on. It's not that they have a lock on their bedroom door where I can get in their closet or I can't go in their room and take a look around. And if I were to do that because I was concerned, not because I'm snooping on them or I don't trust them, but because they've done something where I feel like, oh my goodness, I'm concerned, then that's not me snooping on them. That's my child. So you as a parent are empowered, not by me, but by your Father in heaven who gave you those kids to raise and watch over, not your kids that he's basically loaning to you to raise in the fear and admonition of God, that you can go in their room. You can walk into their room and open the door, walk in and say, hey, I just got a call from the school. You've missed 5 days of school or you skipped school today. Where were you? There's no right to privacy as a teenager or a middle schooler or any other kid. You smell funny. You smell like marijuana. Well, I don't want you in my room, Mom. I'm sorry. I don't have a kid who would say that to me. And not that my kids are perfect. This isn't about the things that they do. What I'm saying to you is, as a parent, take control of this situation. It's yours to control. So I posted on Facebook. There's this piece by Peter Bodie, is a blogger, really wonderful person. And I met him at CPAC in 2012 and we've been friends ever since. And he posted this piece today as a comment on one of my Facebook posts that his wife wrote. And she wrote it today. It's how can we stop school shootings? And I recommend that you go over to the page. I know I say this a lot, but if you're on online social media, and I do this too, I get on Instagram and I look at all the pictures of the pretty houses, the new kitchens, the jackets from the place where I like to buy jackets. But I also spend some of my time on social media reading articles. And some of it I do obviously to be prepared for this show, but some of it I do because I want to understand what's going on in the world. And there are a lot of people out there who know things, who are good at writing, who really have a perspective, and it can help you to kind of turn things over in your mind. And this is one of those pieces that I recommend to you to read. It's not a long read. It's a really good piece. It's at AmericanThinker.com. And I posted it at the Stacy on the Right Show page on Facebook. She talks about how they live in Columbine. Remember the first school shooting where the guys had on the dusters and it was like that, it just totally blew our minds as to what a school shooting would be. And it was March of 1999. And she describes how the day unfolded, and she actually drove by the school and saw these two boys wearing dusters, dressed in black, walking up to the school building. They'd parked their car and gotten out. She saw them walking, and they looked at each other and smiled at each other as they were approaching the building. And she was driving by on her way to somewhere else. She saw it and thought, that's weird. Something about this makes me feel uneasy. She said a prayer and she kept driving. And she was a reporter back then too. Later, she found out they'd gone in and shot up the school and then killed themselves. And so over the next, year, she documented everything about the story. She wrote about it. She interviewed people. It's her community. And she talks about a bunch of different things that they did. They had a Million Mom March in Denver. They debated closing the gun show loophole. They changed some of their laws in Colorado. They focused on fixing Columbine High School. They built a memorial for those who were lost. Some people blamed other people. And this went on for months and months and months. But she says their focus on those things didn't help other communities avoid the same tragedy that hit Columbine. She says, what should we tell other communities? Engage. Watch your sons. She says, how do you watch your son? Be parents. Be communities. Get children more of what children need in their communities. Connect them in their daily lives with more than one adult. The Search Institute of Minnesota has created a program called 40 Developmental Assets for Adolescents, which people in Columbine discovered after the shooting. Through it, communities can touch their sons' lives and watch them as they grow up to see if something's wrong. And she says, get your son help when they need it. But the help has to be effective. So Keith Abloh, who's a well-known forensic psychiatrist, says what all this gun legislation and restricting firearms and increasing background checks fails to address is the real problem, which is untreated mental illness, mental health care system that is completely severed from anything like an ability to deliver outpatient services on an as-needed basis, thanks liberal Democrats, and sometimes even involuntary services that need to be administered that we can no longer give because it's very, very difficult to commit someone involuntarily. They have to have already killed someone or harmed someone. So the mental health care system in the U.S. is so decrepit, people are falling through the gaping holes. And we all know, as Keith Abloh says, the doctor says it has nothing to do with guns. There was a mass stabbing in Texas. And as we should have learned in 1927, when 38 children were killed with homemade explosives at a school, this whole debate should be filibustered right off the Senate floor. People shouldn't show up for a debate about guns because it's just a sideshow. Now, did you know that? Did you know that in 1927, 38 children were killed with homemade explosives at school? Because we all treat school shootings and mass attacks at schools as something it's strictly a phenomenon of the new era. I've said it myself. So, the historical perspective says depraved heart, depraved activities. People are going to do horrible things, especially if they're left to their own devices. So we can fix our mental health care system. We can create effective pathways for people in a community to report a boy or young man who seems mentally ill or dangerous. We can hold our FBI accountable for dropping the ball in this instance. But she says we need to change the way we educate our children in high school. Something about the model we have is causing our sons terrible pain. She says her own son experienced it in a normal, everyday suburban high school. Some of the agony is caused by simply the way that adolescents deal with each other. However, we really should examine our education system to see if there's something we can do to make high school safe emotionally as well as physically. And finally, she says we have to pray for our sons. Now, I've been really kind of mad under the radar about this because, as I've said before, one of our children went through a bullying experience at school. And I watched as I called the other parents. I was insulted. I was verbally assaulted by the other parents, which, what did I expect? Their child is a raging bully, a raging Christian bully, a maniac. And the parents, why would the apple fall from the tree? Why would the apple be any less worm infested than the tree? I watched as the people at the school let it happen. They were afraid of this person. They didn't do anything to help my child. So we had to do something. Imagine the situation with no parents involved, with no prayer, with no Christian environment, and thousands more kids, huge high school, and young men all over the country who they're being bullied and they're not being taught how to cope. They're not praying about it. They don't go to church. This problem has to be addressed. We have to pray about it. We have to get this stigma against religion out of schools. We have to fix our mental health care system. And teachers and administrators need to start doing their jobs. And the FBI too. We'll be back with the last segment of Stacy on the Right on this Friday, right after these messages. Stay there. They want to control who comes into their own personal domain, but when it comes to the United States, it's open season.
No thanks.
So this idea that there's this magical wall, it's like a unicorn wall. It's rainbow colored and it just separates everything off. It just keeps the money from ever touching anything that might have to do with abortion.
Tap it down.
what happens is those terrible results end up negatively impacting society. That's what she thinks about unborn children. That woman fixed her mouth. She's like Cecile Richard's little sister. Tap it down. I won't link it myself, though, because that won't look good. My buddy over at Columbia Law, he's got connections at the New York Times. He can make this happen. Presto changeo, boomo bango. Yeah. So buckle up. Put your seatbelts on, pull your socks up, get yourself ready. Prepare yourself, gird your loins, all of those things and more, because there's so much more for us to find out.
Stacy on the Right, weekday afternoons at 2 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Coming next week on The Dwelling Place. Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
You'll take a risk for money. You'll take a risk for power. You'll take a risk for a relationship, but you won't bet on God.
Dr. Tony Evans says that's the reason we don't see more of the miraculous in life.
If you want to walk on water, you got to get out the boat.
A look at living out the conviction that God is telling the truth. Coming up this week on The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans.
I'm not so certain we have as much time as many of us think. It's high time for the body of Christ to return with a fire lit up under us to proclaiming the truth of God's word, to proclaim the truth of sin and repentance, and not coming from a high, lofty position, but telling the truth as such were some of us. We have to do that. We have to. But what happens is, and I call this first world problem, we have this epidemic of churchianity in America, to where we are far more accepting and far more willing to embrace the trappings of church life, even if they're void of the presence and power and fire of Christ. And I would say to you, just as the Bible says, that we can have a form of godliness while simultaneously, at the exact same time, deny the very power of the gospel.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
Now, some people say that, it appropriates $25 billion, $2.5 billion a year for 10 years for the border wall. It does no such thing. Again, says one thing, does another. Gives $2.5 billion for the first year. Can't be spent on physical barriers. And then every year after that, it makes that money contingent on a report and a certification by the Department of Homeland Security that is purposefully onerous, difficult to achieve, and therefore means the money likely will not be available in future years. And of course, if a Democratic president comes into office in the 10 years of this bill, we know that his Department of Homeland Security will never submit that report certification, and that money will never be spent. And finally, this amendment has no chance of becoming law. Zero chance. Shouldn't pass this chamber to begin with. But even if that were to happen, President Trump issued a veto threat just minutes ago. The House of Representatives is not going to pass this bill. They probably won't even take it up, as they didn't take it up the last time the Senate passed a terrible immigration bill. So, my friends, this Democratic bill deserves to be roundly defeated. There is one bill that has a chance to pass the House of Representatives and get the president's signature, and that is the president's framework proposal.
And that is what we should be looking at. As much as it has parts in it that I don't agree with, I understand that's the nature of things. And again, there's what I want, there's what's possible, there's what I'm more likely to get. And by me, that's all of us. We're all in this thing together. And so as often as I point out the differences between the Republican and Democratic stances on this, every one of us will be impacted by whatever is signed. Every one of us will have either more safety and security in the country or less. More opportunity through jobs and in our educational services, not having them overtaxed by people who are not contributing to the tax base, or we'll have less. There's only two options here. We're either going to get more law breaking and lawlessness, more murder, death, and mayhem, more opportunities for people to be here that aren't supposed to be here, and for them to accidentally shoot us, accidentally run us off the road and kill us, and so on and so forth, or we'll have less of that. There is no in between. The Democrats know that, and that's why they're fighting so hard to keep the status quo or to get more of what we have now, which is basically anarchy and the suspension of, due process and the application of our federal immigration laws. And that's why the Republicans are pushing for the proposal that the president has put forward, namely because he said that's the only one he'll sign, and also because it satisfies many of the requirements, although notably absent from it is the immediate 100% enforcement of E-Verify, which is the easiest part of any of these proposals to actually execute. So, that's kind of depressing. I want to pivot a little bit over to the culture. And by the way, if you're wanting to call in today and join the program, 866-963-2037. This is the last segment. And then it's going to be the weekend. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward to relaxing a little bit and not looking at political stories for a little bit. So I'm starting to get some early reviews from regular people, not the ones who are, kind of professional movie critics who have it's been 100% positive for the new Black Panther movie that's just come out. And before I get to that, before I get to the cultural part, I just want to wrap up this story about The View. Over at foxnews.com, they actually have a piece up by Brian Flood, and he writes about this whole brouhaha with Joy Behar comparing Christianity to a mental illness, and then all of the different stories that were written about it. And I hadn't read everything that was written about it. I've just seen the video and some of the responses. And there's a piece up over at Mediaite, which is a leftist site, but you got to read both sides, right? So you've got Mediaite columnist Joseph Wolfson, who actually spoke to Fox News for this piece. He said it has become jarring how fixated the show, The View, is on politics and how slanted the table is. Wolfson said it's ABC News' prerogative if network executives decide that having 4 outspoken liberals and a single token conservative is profitable, but the decision does a great disservice by marginalizing the view of roughly half the country. Now, over at The Hill, media columnist Joe Concha thinks it would be wise for ABC News to divorce itself from The View. It's a pure opinion and infotainment program and therefore should be under its entertainment division. Ding, 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 ding. Did you know, listeners and viewers, that The View falls under the ABC News division? I thought it was a part of the entertainment product because it's in the middle of the morning. It's daytime television. It's for people who are on the treadmill, stay-at-home moms, people who work at night. It's actually under their news division, which means the ABC News division doesn't have any more credibility. How can you give credibility to a news organization that oversees a program like The View that regularly peddles lies, falsehoods, and misrepresentations? The most glaring of which was their recent statement by Joy Behar. You guys remember, Joy Behar had a piece of breaking news. It was Brian Ross wrote the report. He wrote the lead. A floor director walked the piece of paper with the breaking news on it out to Joy Behar. She read it verbatim, and it blew up. Before she could even clarify it, it blew up and was reported as fake news. So remember, this was what was the story? It was a false report about Mike Flynn promising full cooperation to the Mueller team and being prepared to testify that as a candidate, Donald Trump directed him to make contact with the Russians. He got that information as a news, like it was so unsourced. So in other words, he knows the source, but we don't find out. He, instead of verifying the story, he didn't go out as a news person would do and find other sources to verify it, cross-check it. He just basically wrote the report up and said, we have breaking news, handed it to Joy Behar, and she totally embarrassed herself by reading it. And before the words were even cold out of her mouth, it had already been debunked. So this is ABC News. So anytime you're on abcnews.go.com and you're looking at the stories, I guess we need to take them with more than just one grain of salt, because they are also in charge of the production of The View. Now, obviously, Joy Behar didn't apologize for her comments today. And I mean, I guess she doesn't really have to apologize. I mean, what do we expect? This is the way it's always happened with them. But I think one of the most powerful things about this story, what has happened, is that Vice President Pence was being interviewed on Axios, and Axios is a huge platform. And instead of him calling out The View by name, he called out ABC News. He said, over at ABC, they have a program that just compared my Christianity to mental illness. And that's what took the story viral. In addition to Media Research Center sending out an alert email to everybody saying, call The View or call ABC and let them know how you feel about them comparing Christianity to mental illness. And so for that, just one more thing before we get to our cultural little bit. And really all I'm going to say, let's just take care of it now. I want to see the Black Panther, but I really want to see it as an entertainment vehicle, not as something that is going to be politically charged. I just wish they could have made the movie as another installment of the Marvel franchise without politicizing it, but I'm prepared. You know, I'm going to have my little, well, I won't be eating popcorn. Let's face it. I'm not going to be eating popcorn, but I will be prepared to receive whatever mayhem they're going to visit upon me in the way of jabs and little, you know, holier than thou prognostications in the movie and ruining it basically. And over at Free Beacon, there's a review of it by a conservative where he says it's good, it's okay, it's fine. So we'll see. I have to make sure and check beforehand if there are any spoilers in there before I read that one. But it's by Sonny Bunch, and I really like him over at the Free Beacon. So let's talk about this story here, which is Laura Ingraham on her television show said that, what's his name? What is his name? LeBron James should shut up and dribble the ball. Now, first of all, have you not heard me on this show say that this one or that one, like Chelsea Handler, should shut up and make jokes, and that other one should shut up and act, and this one, you know, I'm tired of hearing political commentary from people who don't bother to read 10 news stories a week, let alone 10 news stories a day. Yes, I've said that many times. Does it make me a racist if I say that about a white person? I think not. So why is Laura Ingraham a racist for saying shut up and dribble about LeBron James? So she's the host of Ingraham Angle over at Fox News. She lambasted as barely intelligible, not to mention ungrammatical, LeBron James's take on Donald Trump, because he said, and we can't say the expletive on here, obviously, but President Trump doesn't give about American voters. He said some other things too. And so if you look at it's on the Daily Caller. In fact, I'll post this as well. So I'll put these up after the show. We're done here in about 5 minutes. I'm going to put these up on Facebook page, and you can take a look. And I don't know if you've noticed, but on the YouTube live stream where you can share the show, so they're demonetizing my account. I'm just all over the place right now, aren't I? They're demonetizing my account because I haven't had 4,000 hours worth of views. See how they make these arbitrary rules up about what, you know, because I have videos on there and they have decent views, the ones that are individual videos, but my show live stream is just getting started, so it doesn't have tons of views. So they're going to demonetize my account at the end of this month if I don't have 4,000 hours worth of views on my YouTube account. I never made a ton of money from it anyway, but it's the point that I'm a conservative and they're demonetizing me. So anyway, that's going on. So you've got her basically making these statements about him. And, you know, she says, must they run their mouths like that? Unfortunately, a lot of kids and some adults take these ignorant comments seriously. Look, there might be a cautionary lesson in LeBron for kids. This is what happens when you attempt to leave high school a year early to join the NBA. Ouch. It's always unwise to seek political advice from someone who gets paid $100 million a year to bounce a ball. Oh, and LeBron and Kevin, you're great players, but no one voted for you. Millions elected Trump to be their coach. So keep political commentary to yourself, or as someone once said, shut up and dribble. Now, a lot of people online in the sports world are really upset with Laura Ingraham for saying this, but if we're supposed to tolerate everyone, why can't she be of the opinion that LeBron James is not qualified to give political commentary? I mean, how often have you seen a conservative on television, on CNN, and heard someone on the left say that person's unqualified to give commentary? And these are people, conservatives, who write for a living, who bring all kinds of gravitas to their opinions, people who have been on thousands of interviews, they've done thousands of radio and television appearances, people who actually have legitimate chops in the political arena to provide their opinions. And the leftists regularly say, well, we can't take opinions from her because she's a conservative, she's a sellout, she's this, she's that. Yeah, I'm talking about criticisms of myself. And I find it comical because the ones who are criticizing me are the ones who hold the most ridiculous views, unsupported views, emotionally driven views. So here we are again. You got Laura Ingraham, who clerked for a Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. She holds a Juris Doctorate in the law, and she's a syndicated radio host for decades, and also now a host on a major cable news network. I don't have to tell you how difficult it is and how, I mean, it's basically impossible to get a show on Fox News because they're not just out hiring any old Jenny to come on and do a show for them. And so they're criticizing Laura Ingraham for saying she doesn't want to get her commentary and she doesn't want kids and Americans at large to get their commentary on politics from someone who doesn't even read one news story a day. Someone who, according to this, I guess he didn't graduate from high school. I mean, I'm not judging, but is he qualified to make political commentary? I tend to agree with her. And I don't think she made the statement because she's a racist. It doesn't matter that LeBron James is black. It matters that he keeps making these statements about the president that are unsupported. And so I've made the criticism before, and I make it here again yet one more time for this week. The last time I'm going to say it for this week, but not the last time ever. Why can't the liberals criticize President Trump's policy positions? Why don't they criticize the fact that he wants to stop or temporarily halt immigration from majority Muslim countries that lack vetting procedures and operational embassies because that's a bad policy? Why do they have to criticize it? Because they claim it's racism. The same thing with almost every policy he's put forward. The border wall is not about racism. The immigration reform procedures, all of the things that he's proposing for immigration, they're not about race. They're about protecting Americans. His tax reform policy, they said it was about giving breaks to millionaires and billionaires, but the majority of the people who are seeing fatter paychecks this month are people who make less than $70,000 a year. So I'll tell you why. I'll answer my own question. The reason we don't see liberals criticizing the president's policies, the reason we don't see them criticize things that I advocate for on this show or any other conservative out there, they're not criticizing it because they can't. You can't come at somebody making more money a month because they're keeping more of what they're earned. That's something the Democrats can't come up against. They can't come up against safety for American citizens within the borders of the homeland. They can't come up against a sovereign nation with borders controlling immigration as the citizens voted for. So they're going to yell racism, sexism, and everything else under the world. Meanwhile, main ones doing the racism and the sexism, Democrats. Yeah, that's the show for today. Thank you so much for being here. Have a blessed weekend. I'll be back with you on Monday, which is President's Day. Don't forget to tune in. Thanks, everybody.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.